Oh, good afternoon. How are you doing today? I hope you are doing great. All right. It's another wonderful edition. And today we are talking about the power of feedback. I'm sure it's going to be quite engaging and quite interesting. Wherever you are joining from, I'd love you to drop it in the comment section. All right. Today's session is also going to be quite interactive. All right. So what does feedback mean to you? How do you process it? When you are given feedback, how do you analyze it? These are many more we'll be looking at today. And we'll try to make sure that we have practical ways of making it, make sense. So today we'll understand the gap and how feedback gap destroys team. We'll try to find a framework that will work for you. We'll speak about 3 mistakes you should avoid when giving feedback so that it doesn't become confrontational. How do you document your feedbacks? So much so that it's not going to be words in the thin air. How do you document it and make it usable and practical? Usable for the receiver, practical for the organization. So that one way or the other, there are, documents that shows the feedback that has been given, feedback given per time and over a period of time. All right. And then build a culture within your organization that is feedback rich. Some organizations treat some people specially and different. We'll see some of them in our, use cases. All right. So the first question is, in the last 6 months, have you received any feedback that actually changed how you work? In today's reality, data says that over 69% of managers are uncomfortable giving feedback. But this is the twist. 82% of employees want more feedback. So you ask yourself, what are we dealing with here? This is what we call a supply-demand crisis in feedback. And you ask yourself, how did we get here? We are saying that 69% of managers are uncomfortable giving feedback, but 82% of employees want more feedback. So we have a supply-demand crisis. The supply is low. 69% is quite high, but the demand from employee expectation from their manager is even higher. So you ask yourself that exactly what are we dealing with here? And this is, it's a funny scenario. It's a funny scenario because there are some instances that it has happened, but it did not yield the desired outcome or result. And I will speak to 2 quickly. The first one was in 2017 at Uber. The CEO, Travis Kalanick, had what was, a very funny, toxic way of working. So a particular engineer approached HR and reported sexual harassment. And HR's response was a similitude of, this is an high performer and we are going to give him another chance. We are going to help him understand that what he has done is bad and he needs to change. Now, what Susan Fowler had wanted was that there should be something more concrete, because if an investigation is done properly, maybe she's not the only one that is finding that expression or scenario from the, CEO. But nothing was done. Now, what she did was then to, release a blog post in February of 2017, and immediately she received she released that blog post. Everything just went, I would say it went nuclear, and it was everywhere. Now, what she revealed was that this is a systemic failure of feedback and accountability at Uber. And the impact was that, the CEO, after thorough investigation, or even without thorough investigation, when the pressure started mounting, the CEO had to resign. There had to be $10 million settlement, and there was a total complete change of both the board and the leadership. And Eric Holder was called to investigate. And in investigating, Eric Holder says that there was lack of meaningful feedback to executives. So it means executives were kind of small lords. They could do anything and get away with it. And this cannot be the culture of an organization that is global and wants to make a rapid impact. So what was the actual result of this, entire saga at Uber? Was such that there was erosion of over 10 billion company value. And in our own opinion, what our crime was documenting that HR refused to give executive honest feedback about their behavior because they were high performers. So the CEOs resigned, investors fled, and then Uber had to learn the hard way. When you don't give feedback to your top people, they become your biggest liability. It's a global menace. It's a global problem. And I would, still go in and share some other feedback later on, or scenarios that are live. But I would, love to move on, at least for now. So the next thing is, what is the real problem? Now, you see a scenario in, let's say, a tech startup in Nigeria where you lose 5 engineers in 3 months. And then when the founder or the HR manager is doing the exit interview, every single person will say the same thing. I had no idea if I was doing well or not. It was just like a tsunami, something happening to me all of a sudden. And what most organizations don't realize is that you will lose money in recruiting, you will lose money in productivity that will be lost, and then your actual deliverables. Maybe you need to launch a new product, you need to overhaul a new product or an existing product. You have delay across board, and this value runs into millions, sometimes as high as hundreds of millions. But no one really pay attention to look at exactly what could have been, or what might have been different, or what could have been done differently. And this is where we need to be very careful how we manage feedback in our organization and how we see and receive feedback. Now, so the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a pause, and I'd love you to also give me some feedback. And the question is, when was the last time you gave someone feedback? What stopped you from doing it sooner? When was the last time you gave someone feedback? This month, last month, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? And what stopped you from doing it sooner? I think it's critical for us to understand that if we want to help people, this is a must-have. Most times when people are leaving an organization, the red flag is that they don't know what they are failing at until it is too late. The next thing is that they don't know what is great or what great looks like in your own context and your own definition. Sometimes also they don't feel seen, heard, or valued. Things are just happening all around them. They don't know when they can speak, when they are valued, and when they are seen. And unfortunately, this is the worst part of the entire experience. Silence sometimes means satisfaction, because when you don't speak as a leader and give feedback, people believe or assume that they are great at what they are doing. Now, one of the things we've seen, or I have seen as a leader, is that we avoid feedback to protect relationships. But lack of feedback destroys them. And that's the bit that we need to be very, 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 very conscious of. It is actually the lack of feedback that destroys the relationship. And every day you delay feedback, you are making eventual conversation harder. If you are meant to give a feedback today and you postpone it or push it forward, when it's meant to happen, the later you make it happen, the worse or the more difficult that conversation is going to appear and is going to be. allow us to speak to what we need to do differently going forward. And I'll be proposing to us a framework that we can use. The next thing is, how do you manage giving feedback? How do you make it easier? How do you make it actionable? How do you make it simpler? How do you make it not, so complex and difficult for people to have and receive feedback? How do you give feedback, and how do you make sure it's not awkward, or it's not something that, you are not confident and comfortable to give? So I propose a framework called the SBR framework. The SBR framework. This is, setting things in context and trying hard to make sure that you can follow a pattern to construct the engagement for the feedback and make sure that the conversation will be actionable. So I'll give some example that is not practical, that is vague, and then something that is a bit clearer to then be shared. All right, so the SBR framework stands for situation, behavior, impact, and request. SBIR framework. Situation, what was the situation like? When and where did it occur? The behavior, what did you observe? What are the facts, not your own interpretation, but what are the facts of the matter? The impact, what will be the effect, whether on the productivity of the person, whether on you as a line manager, as a colleague, or on a project. And requests, what you want instead, what you think should be done going forward. Specific and actionable, not something confusing, not something that the person is second-guessing him or herself, not something that the person is asking internal personal questions like, have I offended my line manager? Is it like they don't like me in this company? No, that's awkward scenario situations will not be there. All right, so this framework is what is used in international organizations across the world, Google and top organizations. So let's break it down. The SBR framework was the situation, when and where did it occur, the behavior, what was observed, the impact, the effect on the team, on you as a team manager, on a client or on the project or whatever scenario, and then the request, specific actionable request going forward. All right, so when it comes to the situation, I'm going to give quite some examples here so that we can follow properly. You don't say things like you always or you never, you always do this, you never don't do this. No, you set the proper situation of when it happened and where it happened. For example, in yesterday's client's presentation at 2 p.m. Specific. If you had said in yesterday's client presentation, maybe the person had 5 presentations yesterday. So which one exactly are you speaking about? So the person has to start thinking, and the person might lose the value of the conversation. Now, next is the behavior. Oh, you were disrespectful. How? What context is my being disrespectful? That is, leaving room for several forms of interpretation. But let's say you then go ahead and say, interrupted the client 3 times during their question. Interrupted the client 3 times during their question. That's fact. The person will just say, really? Was you up to 3 times? But the person will know that yes, they did interrupted the client. All right, let's move to impact. It was bad. Yesterday's meeting, in yesterday's client presentation at 2 p.m., you were disrespectful. It was bad. It was bad is vague. It was bad is not clear. It's not direct. It's not the effect of what hasn't happened. Because it was bad just speaks to the person looking inward and saying that it was bad. Is it my speech? Is it like, oh, maybe I didn't have lunch? No. You go straight to the impact. The client looked uncomfortable and we lost the follow-up question that could have closed the deal. Impact. What was the impact of those interruptions that occurred during the meeting? And then you follow up with the big bang. What is the request? What you want instead? Specific and actionable. You don't go and say, just be better. No, just be better is not actionable. How will I know that next time I have not interrupted the client? But you go by saying something like, next time, please let the client finish their full thoughts, then ask if you can add to it. Or let the client finish their full thoughts, try to frame or rephrase the context and be sure you follow them. Bam, that's the request. And that's much more reasonable, much more specific, and most importantly, actionable. Not something that at the end of the day, the receiver of the feedback is lost and confused. All right, I'd love to move to another scenario. In this scenario, an employee has just missed his or her deadline. And I would paint a confrontational way of giving the feedback, how most people seldom do it. We need to talk about your performance. The employee, guards up their loin. They just gather themselves together and say, what is it about my performance? You keep missing deadlines. This is becoming a pattern. The manager. Then the employee thinks for a while and says something like, but I've been working really hard. And then the manager goes, well, it's not good enough. You need to do better. I mean, if you were in the situation or you are in the place of the employee, you leave that conversation confused, resentful, not clear, and wouldn't know exactly what to change. Because, well, it is not good enough. You need to do better. Is nothing actionable. What exactly do I need to do better? All right. But for a result-driven way that is going to follow the situation, behavior, impact, and request framework, let's rephrase that same scenario, or let's create a simple one, another one. Now I'll start with manager, and then I'll use maybe Lola as the employee. Hey Lola, can we talk about Q4 reports? That's the situation. Sure. The response from Lola. The deadline, now the manager, the deadline was Friday at 5 p.m. and I received it Monday at 3 p.m. That's the behavior, specific and factual. Then the manager continues. Because of that, I couldn't review it before the board meeting Tuesday morning. So I had to present with last quarter's data. That's the impact. Now, the manager moving forward to address the impact says the board questioned our preparedness and we lost credibility on the new budget requests. That's also another impact. They were not ready for the board and they had to use an old data for the presentation. Now the board questioned preparedness. They lost credibility on their follow-up request for a new budget. Now, this is Lola's feedback now. I didn't realize it affected the board meeting. Now the manager will pick it up. Going forward, if you see you will miss a deadline, can you flag it 48 hours early so we can adjust or find backup? That is the request. Specific, actionable. Now, Dollar goes and says, absolutely, I can do that. The outcome is that there is understanding, there is a common alignment, there is commitment, and there is a clear path forward. If that situation should repeat itself again, Dollar will be in a better place to know exactly what to do. Unlike the first scenario where it ended by you should do better. God will, you should do better. All right. So from the first scenario and the second scenario, I'm going to ask you, the audience, which version would make you more likely to change, version A or version B? So let's speak to 3 mistakes that people make when they are giving feedback. The first one is what people call the sandwich experience, where you have the positive, negative, positive. Meaning you say something good about the person, you go to what is wrong or the negative thing the person is doing, and then you end it with positive. It's called the sandwich compliment. This can be a trust killer, because at the end of the day, the person is hearing bad or good, bad and good. So the person can leave the meeting with a perception of just the good. Now, so people only hear the positive parts. The negative gets buried and ignored. It creates confusion about what actually needs to change, and over time, people learn to distrust your compliments. All right, an example: Adebayo's promotion shock. So Adebayo worked at a Lagos consulting firm. Every review says you are doing great. One tiny thing, client communication, but overall fantastic. He applied for promotion, rejected. Reason: poor client communication skills. He was devastated. Why didn't anyone tell me this was serious? They had eaten in compliments, sandwiches for 2 years. Remember, this is the way Adebayo received the feedback. You are doing great. However, there is one tiny thing: client communication. On the overall, fantastic. So you hear doing great, fantastic at the end, but the one tiny thing, the wrong thing, the negative feedback is client communication. All right, so this is what I will propose you do instead. I have some feedback, and this is to Adebayo. Still the same scenario. I have some feedback about client communication. Is now a good time? Then you give the feedback using the SBIR framework. Ask, what is your best style of engaging a customer? Why do you engage the customer in this regard? Have you tried approach A, B, or C? And end with what you want the person to do, which is the requests. Going forward, try some of these options you have mentioned. I am confident you can improve this. Let me know if you need help. That is a direct approach. There is nothing speaking about sandwich. There is nothing speaking about the positive, negative, positive. Because everyone wants to hear the good things about themselves. So when you go with the sandwich approach, it can, eliminate crust. Now the next one is the just fix it. This is, this leaves room for, no clarity. It just puts clarity in a vacuum. Now you are pointing out problem without explaining impact or desired outcome. When you do just fix it approach, people don't understand why it matters. No clear standard of good enough. People don't, they feel like this is criticism, not guidance. You are not exactly helping them to find the best pathway to improvement. So if there is no pathway to improvement, there is no guidance, then what is the feedback? Now another example, the standard that seems to just be existing everywhere. Chiamaka was told her presentation lacked executive presence. She tried everything: new outfit, speaking louder, more slides, fewer slides, still lacking. Finally asked, what does executive presence look like? Manager couldn't explain. Turns out it meant lead with return on investment data or features. 6 months wasted. 6 months wasted. Instead of you to just say, Amaka, what you need to do is that let's bring data that leaders can resonate with, that speaks to the return on investment, or and not just the features we are churning out or we are creating. And if you don't know what good looks like, no one in your team can deliver it. And this is where you must be very clear as to exactly what the standard is or what something means to you. Another example you see a lot, around developers is your code quality is poor, fix it. Your code quality is poor, fix it. That's not good enough. I mean, that's going to get the person even more confused if the person is a junior. But look at it from an angle where you say, in the last sprint, we are 12 bugs traced to missing error handling in your module. This cost 8 hours of team debugging time and delayed our release by 3 days. Going forward, please use error handling template in the docs and request a code review before committing to main. Would a 30-minute peering session help? I mean, that eliminates the code quality issue you are talking about, because you have put in place, analyzing critically what was the situation, the behavior exemplified, or what should be the behavior, the impact on the team, the lost time, and then the request, what should be done going forward. All right. The annual review ambush. This is the most popular in almost every context, and I will still go to some example. There was a sad example that was, I've heard about in Amazon, how they use performance improvement plan, and several ways HR people also implement performance improvement plan. I would speak about that shortly, so that people will have clarity as to how to manage this feedback that we are talking about. Now, the annual review ambush. Saving up feedback for formal reviews instead of giving it in real time. Now, if you wait till December or January when you are doing the annual review of the employee to give them the feedback, then this is bad on you. This is just not the culture you should have. There should be things like check-in, coaching, and all other options that you have to engage your employee. Now, why this annual review fails? It is too late to fix the problem. The problem has been there since maybe February or March, and then you are waiting till December to fix it. No, that's not good enough. It feels like an attack, list of failures. You are just coming to someone with all negatives. No, that's not good. That's not good. It damages trust. It means you have watched me fail for months when you should have helped me, enabled me, empowered me. No, that's not good. No opportunity for course correction. I mean, things have gone wrong. Then it leads to surprise PIP or termination. For anyone who is not used to PIP, it's called performance improvement plan. It's a process that HR introduces to help an underperforming team member to raise the bar of their performance, improve, or else they are out of the door. Now let's look at a quick case study. The excellent employee who got fired. Now, Ngozi worked at a bank. Mid-year review, excellent performance, keep it up. Annual review 4 months later, performance issue. You're on a performance improvement plan. A question, what changed in 4 months? Answer, nothing. The issues existed all year, but manager was too busy to give feedback. She quit immediately, sued for constructive dismissal, won by 8 million naira. That's an example that happens every day. Now, every day without feedback is a day closer to resignation or termination, because you are making the life of that person miserable. So there is what we call the 24 to 48 hour rule. If something needs feedback, give it as fast as you can. 24 hours to 48 hours. Worst case scenario, week. don't go beyond a week without giving that feedback. You say, oh, I want to wait for the next one-on-one. What if you don't remember? What if you don't remember? If you are uncomfortable, that's exactly why you should do it sooner. Waiting makes it worse. Now, daily feedback beats weekly feedback, weekly beats monthly, monthly beats annual. Annual without ongoing feedback is negligence. Now, just one question, and I'd love you to drop in the chat. Which of these 3 mistakes have you experienced, giving or receiving, and what happened? Which of these 3 mistakes, the one I mentioned, above, the number 1, the compliment or sandwich, positive, negative, positive, and then all you hear is positive. Just fix it. Don't just tell you go and fix it. I don't care. I don't know what you do. Just fix it. And then the annual review ambush, where you're just thrown under the bus for one thing. Well, I think I have received all of it before. I have seen a line manager who has told me repeatedly that I was a very good, a very valuable member of the team, but he will not promote me. So I don't know. I see that as a sandwich approach. Just fix it. Yeah, I've seen line managers before also would not be patient to help, especially when I was young in my career, and then would just leave me to say, just fix it. And I think I've burnt my fingers 1 or twice trying to do, follow through on that approach. The annual review ambush, yes. I've received this also before, and I can tell you that it is bad. It is bad, especially when it is peer review and there is no other person in the room to speak on your behalf. It is really bad, really, really bad, and it will affect retention. It will destroy the retention of any organization. I don't know whatever you say, but that's my perspective, and you need to improve on it. All right, why documentation matters. It is critical and important for you to document every feedback session that you are giving or you are having. It's critical. For legal protection, it will be relevant for you to use during your performance reviews or if there is a case of termination. You also use it to track progress over time. How is this person improving, or is this person still in the same threshold, or they are declining? It creates accountability for both parties. The receiver of the feedback and the giver of the feedback, you are both accountable to see exactly what has been said and what was supposed to be done. It prevents he said, she said disputes. Oh, this was what was said. This is what I said. No, it eliminates that dispute. And then it identifies patterns. Same issue because training needs. If something is being said the same time or over time about one person, one thing, same issue, over and over and over, then that begs for a training. All right, so how do you manage this documentation? Create a simple feedback log template. A simple Excel sheet. All that you need to take note of is what was the date, who is the employee, what was the type of the feedback, is it positive, constructive, the SBR format that you have used, did you state the situation, did you state the behavior, did you state the impact, and the reaction, what you expect going forward. And last but not the least, that is critical and important, but most people overlook, is the follow-up dates. When is the next follow-up on the conversation? When are you going to check in with the person and say, oh, you are making progress, you are not making progress, this is what we need to do, these are the next steps, please take notes. Now, recommended tools that you can use, I've mentioned you can use Excel, you can use Notion, you can use Google Doc, you can use Slack, send messages, you can use slides to do your documentation also, and then you can use email to self and to them. So whether you are the receiver or you are the giver either party can use email to document that experience. Please don't use verbal only. Verbal is good enough, but don't use verbal only. Ensure something else complements it. This is another example. The documentation that saved the company. The startup CEO in Nigeria gave an employee consistent feedback over 6 months about missing client meetings, all documented with dates, the SBR format. Eventually had to terminate. Employee sued for unfair dismissal. In court, CEO presented the feedback log, 12 documented instances, each with specific dates, behavior, impact, and improvement request. Case dismissed in 15 minutes. Judge, this is model HR practice. This is model HR practice. All right, so the lesson is documentation isn't about building a case against someone. It's about clarity, fairness, and accountability. All right, if you have any example, please drop it in the comments. We'll be glad to learn from you. How do you build a feedback-rich environment? Not just top-down. It has to be line manager, direct report, line manager, other reporting line. No. Feedback should flow in all directions, whether it is bottom up, top down, middle or peers. It should be all direction, up, down, peer to peer, and it is normal, not scary. It's specific, not vague. It's about growth, not punishment, and it should be frequent, not annual. All right. I have several examples here, but let me look for one that's be able to resonate with. All right, so I'll use the Wells Fargo's fake account scandal 2016. All right, so this is coming from congressional hearing, the CFPB investigation, and multiple court documents. Now, what has happened is that 5,300 employees were fired for opening fake accounts. Employees reported impossible sales targets with no feedback on how to meet them ethically. Management ignored red flags for years, and there was culture of fear prevented honest upward feedback. Who wants to talk to the boss? Who wants to be the scapegoat? Who wants to talk to Oga? Now the impact is that Fargo was fined $3 billion. The CEO resigned. 5,300 employees were fired. Many claimed they had no choice. And then congressional investigation revealed broken feedback structure. Now, a quote from one of the testimony of the employees says, "I complained to management multiple times. I got no feedback. I assumed my concerns didn't matter, so I stopped raising them." I mean, this is a cultural issue. An employee is crying out, speaking out, nobody's paying attention. So, Wells Fargo ended up firing 5,300 employees for fraud. But here's what they didn't tell you. Those employees had been begging for feedback for years. They told managers, these sales targets are impossible without cheating. The response, silence. So employees assumed silence meant approval. So the real crime wasn't the fake account. It was a culture where feedback only flowed downwards and only when someone was being fired. And this is really, all shades of wrong. All shades of wrong. Right. Another story was told about Amazon PIP, Amazon Performance Improvement Plans, tagged Rank and Yank. The source for this is from the New York Times investigation inside Amazon, wrestling big ideas in a bruising workplace. Now, what had happened? The employees repeated or reported receiving no feedback for months, suddenly placed on PIP, performance improvement plans, within 2 to 3 months notice. Many describe being blindsided by negative reviews after positive check-ins, system nicknamed rank and yank. Now, one of the sad quotes from the article says that a woman who had thyroid cancer was given a low performance rating after she returned from treatment. Another woman who had a miscarriage was told to travel on business the day after she returned from the hospital. All right, the impact was so bad that there was public outcry and reputational damage. Jeff Bezos had to publicly respond, and then there were system reforms in 2006 to 2017. Now, the New York Times exposed how Amazon employees were put on performance improvement plans with zero warning after months of being told they were doing fine. And the problem here is that, that example, another example, says that a woman returned from cancer treatment and was immediately given a low rating. Why? Because Amazon's culture of data-driven review had eliminated human feedback. They were measuring everything except the one thing that mattered: clear, honest communication. Now, receiving feedback, the other side, the action plan that you need to commit, your immediate action plan is that you need to commit to one thing. So if you're on the call and you think you need a feedback, or someone needs a feedback from you, who needs that feedback from you this week? Write them down. You may not want to name them in the chat, but write them down. What's the one behavior you will address in that chat or in that feedback session? Let us know. And when will you schedule the conversation? And what will be your opening line using SBIR? I'd love you to share the comments for this immediate action plan, whether you need to talk to someone to give you feedback, seeing that your relationship with the person has not been too great and you want to improve it, or you've seen that performance at work has not been great within your team and you also want to do something about it. I think that would be a good opportunity. All right, so we close out with question and answer. People will ask things like, what if the person gets defensive? Then your EI, emotional intelligence training, kicks in. We've spoken about that from time to time. Stay on the issue. Don't get sidetracked, distracted, or emotional. No. Stay on the issue and the feedback you are giving. All right. How do you give feedback to your boss? Right? This is also close to having a difficult conversation. Stick to that, SBIR framework, and then find the right way to ensure that you communicate it across to him. And where it is difficult, you might need to pass it through your HRBP or an established process within your organization for you to give, that feedback to your line manager. What happens about cultural differences? Nigerian versus the Western feedback styles. All right, so there are instances where culturally it's difficult for you to give a feedback to someone that's older than you or someone that is a way senior colleague. I would say that you need to be bold in giving feedback and you need to stay on the point and make sure you are direct. Don't go to the person and say, I know everybody likes you, or this is my problem with you. No, don't do that. Don't start on a note that will trigger anything negative in the person. Find the best opportunity to engage the person and give the feedback. And understand that when you get into the workplace, as much as culture is important, you need to respect people, you still need to be ethical and professional. And giving feedback is just part of your work. It's just, it's just part of the ethics. It's not anything personal. All right, can you give too much feedback? I would say yes, you can give too much feedback. If it is every day, everything, anytime, anyhow. Person is doing something, you say this one is bad. Person is doing another thing, this one is bad. Person will just leave you and stay away from you and the organization. How do you balance positive and negative feedback? I would say that no matter how bad anything is, there will always be the good side. But ensure that you are having all of them at 2 different sessions, or you let one precede the other. Don't join them together. Don't do the sandwich approach. No, don't sandwich anything. And if you are maybe very careful type, you can start with the negative feedback and end with the positive. But for all the negative, make sure it is properly documented and stated clearly. All right, it's been a very interesting time, and I hope that I've been able to help you go through this session and you've enjoyed every bit of it. Some books I love you to check out: Radical Candor by Kim Scott, Thanks for the Feedback by Douglas Stone and Sheila Inn, Crucial Conversation by Kerry Patterson. So if you have struggled with this, please let me know in my inbox. I can give you more tips. And if you think you need a coaching session on how to manage feedback in your organization, I'm here. I can help you. Let's have a talk around it and see what we need to do. If you forget anything in this session, one thing you must remember is that feedback is not something you do to people. It is something you do for people. And the biggest gift you can give someone is helping them see what they can't see themselves. That's the gift of feedback. And don't hold it back from someone. Give it freely and let everyone around you better at what they do and how they do it. All right. So we see again next week. I'll be here again 4 p.m. next week. Join me and invite your friends also to join. And I look forward to having another engaging conversation. Thank you. Bye for now.